Okay, so over the last few screens, we've been looking at the peers here, the external peers, and whether they have single BGP connections or dual BGP connections. And of course, the twist is that whether it's single or it's dual to the external peer is relatively easily normalized, because in one case here, all we had to do is do a resolve. You could put the vFormat address on the remote peer, and normalizing a single BGP session for version 4 and version 6 to an external peer is relatively straightforward. And really, it hasn't mattered the nature of the external peers. The tricky situation has been how that external peer gets next hop self as it goes into the CBGP and the IBGP. And that's really been the catch, setting up this route reflector with the single session. So the external single sessions are relatively easily dealt with. It's the internal single session that has caused us some of the issues. Now, as we've discussed that, it hasn't really mattered whether we had C1 here, C2 here, C10 here. It hasn't really been an issue. In the diagrams, I had C1 marked here and C1 marked here, but up till now, we haven't really specified who C1 and C2 are. It hasn't really mattered whether this was C1 in this location or in this location. When we've been looking at router 8, the fact is the routes come in and they need next hop resolving. However, I've now corrected my diagram to show C2 in its correct location as per the workbook, and now it really does matter. We're going to be starting to look at C1 and C2 in some detail. Okay, so both customer C1 and customer C2 had incomplete neighbour information when it came to setting up the eBGP peers. So we're going to be looking at customer C1 first. So here we are, we've got our interface, we've got VLAN tagging in our unit just to separate out this eBGP peer. We've got our family INET address. And what we're going to be doing, a link local multicast scope ping. So this is pinging a multicast, it's the local scope. We do that out on the interface, and of course we're going to get a reply, which is going to be the link local. And of course the restriction here on C1 is that it can do BGP on both version 4 and version 6, but on the version 6 it needs the link local address. We didn't know what that was, so this multicast ping reveals it, and now we can configure our neighbours. So set protocol BGP group, first group C1 v4, obviously the peer, the neighbour. C1 v6, we've got the peer here, we've got the neighbour, which is the link local address. And then the most important thing is we have to put the local interface. And this is really very clear because, of course, the link local came from the other end, and BGP isn't going to know which interface to use, so it's not going to be able to establish the peer. So we put in the local interface and we mark that there. And then that's the incomplete BGP information for C1 dealt with. And next screen, we're going to be doing C2. Okay, so here we have the peer customer C2. Now, in the case of customer C2, we haven't been given the autonomous system number. So that's not a problem. What we're going to do is we're going to configure the peer with effectively a random autonomous system number, set protocols, BGP, group C2, neighbour, we've got the IP version 4 neighbour here, which we know. We're going to set the peer ES to 65,000, which is effectively random. Turn on the trace options. We're going to turn on the flag BGP open detail, and then when we run show the BGP log, we're going to see the correct AS number. With that AS number, we're going to be able to set the group again. You see these lines, second time we set the group, and this time we're putting on the correct peer AS number. Now, just a couple of things with this particular peer. This particular peer is running INET 6 and unicast and INET unicast in a similar way to P1. It wouldn't have mattered, but that's just what it's running. So, so it's running a version 4 neighbour, and inside the version 4 neighbour, we're having the INET 6 tunneled, similar way to P1. Now, the resolution on this is pretty much automatic because what we've actually got here is on the interface, we've got the family INET 6 address, and that is the vFormat address. So those 4 Fs here at the beginning, v4 mapped address. Of course, this is the interface that we've prepared for this. We've put it on a unit and put a VLAN ID on it to keep the traffic separate. Okay, so the traffic here is going to be coming in, and effectively this isn't going to need that first next hop, that first resolution of the address, because the INET6 address, this v4 mapped address, is actually on the interface. So therefore it's going to be able to resolve those, but it will need the next hop self as it goes into the iBGP cloud. And that's the incomplete BGP information for customer C2.